So welcome everyone. We're coming into our second week of experiential breathing. So this week it is I recognize my reflections and projections. And this one is a bit longer, a bit more of a mouthful to keep repeating. This is our conscious response to keep connected to. And really this week we're looking at triggers. We're looking at things that are very uncomfortable, people, circumstances, things that activate energy within us that's hard to be with and sit with. We all get triggered, and it's part of our unintegrated charges from the past. And it's very transfixing just to focus on what is in front of us. But these are old energies, and he speaks about these old energies within our body that could have been from the womb, could have been from pre-verbal, before we had a hippocampus and a memory, but our body remembers these old, uncomfortable energies that moved through. And life is a loving force. Life is a kind universe, and it wants us to clear, it wants us to integrate, it doesn't want us to hang out with all of this old, heavy, dense energy. So what it's going to do is almost like when we do family constellations. I'm not sure how many people have ever heard of family constellations, but presence moves into and activates people around you to say things, to do things so that you can feel the uncomfortable feelings. But what happens is that it's so hard and painful and difficult to feel that we just try and resist it rather than feel it. Because it's a lot to contain sometimes, you know, decades of unprocessed fear or anger or grief. And what we tend to want to do is to go into a story and complain and blame. And it's very sort of hardwired into our culture, into society, into our families. And we see that we want to point the finger at someone else. And in that moment, we start to become what Michael Brown says is either a victim or a victor. We're either someone who's something terrible is happening to us, someone's done something terrible to us, or we're the victor, we're better than someone else, we're more superior, we did it better. So these victim circumstances are where we go to in the mind. And it's really a spiritual practice to try and catch ourselves when we notice. And the thing is about life is there is a lot of unconscious people around to activate us. And there's a lot of, not everyone is a walking saint and a guru. So everyone's got a lot of unprocessed charges in their system. And presence is also enabling the circumstances to really perfectly be activated in every person uniquely. So they press that button in you of rejection, they'll press that button in you of fear, press that angry button. And really it's our responsibility, and it's really hard, but it's our responsibility to see that a circumstance happened and reframe it so we don't get lost in the identification of this poor self. And I had a very, very triggering situation that happened to me this week. So I'm going to share it because it's quite helpful, I think, to make it out of sort of the ideas and concepts and into what is it really like. And I'm really open to and welcoming other people to share things that they maybe have been activated with this week or and in the last few days, or and the process of using these tools and material to hold it. So I try and keep the story as minimal as possible, but what ended up happening was I was in the mountains and we were hiking and resting, and the person that was leading the group disappeared for 4 hours or hours and hours, and water started to get low, and I didn't know when he was coming back. And he had mentioned that a year before he'd been suicidal and wanted to just die in the forest and had planned it, but he managed to sort of regroup himself. So there was a lot of fear because I felt I wasn't trusting, and a lot of old fear came up to be sat with. Was I going to make it out of the mountain? Was I going to survive? And in that place, it was very easy. And I'm still actually in a process of coming into forgiveness and opening back into presence and softening to being angry that that happened. And really it's my responsibility to realize that everyone is just acting on their level of consciousness. So rather than he was irresponsible, how could he do this? My work, the spiritual practice, is how can I see that he was acting from the best level of consciousness that he knew how in that moment. And my job is to come back and feel the fear and the terror that that brought up in me. So we don't want someone else's unconsciousness to infect us. And that's our work, or a situation or a person or whatever it is that's making us uncomfortable. We don't want their level of consciousness to drag us down. So this is the spiritual work. And when we go to the gym, we do the weights, and it takes effort, and we strengthen the arms, and it sometimes feels really challenging and hard because we're holding things that are hard, but we get stronger. And so this is what life does to us. It sends us the people, it sends us the circumstances to strengthen us. And we can go, no, I don't want this lesson. I don't want this lesson. And we can stamp our feet, which we might do for a while, but it's like, when can we come back to presence is giving me gifts so that I can be the strongest, most evolved person that I can be. And that's the case for everyone. So all of the triggers, 100% of them are old. And it may look different in the past, all the different circumstances may look different, but the fear is the same, or the anger is the same. It's the same energy, and it's pure life force energy. This pure energy is something to dive into. We're quite afraid to feel it, but it's often the stories that make us afraid. If we can just dive into the energy and be with the energy of our fear, it will start to dissolve back into awareness. It will start to dissolve back into presence. It will start to become conscious. We just have to hold it. So life brings up these upsets. And upset spelt backwards, you'll see Michael Brown loves doing little word plays. It spells setup. So an upset is a setup. It's a setup from life so that you can integrate more of the old, heavy, dense stuff that's within the body. So we have a choice. A circumstance happens. Do we go to blame and complain, and then we're going to go to victim and victor? Or do we go to feel, breathe, and maybe reframe it with, that was the level of consciousness that they knew how. Maybe just a little reframe can help. That was the best that they knew how. That was the level of consciousness that they were working with. And my job is to breathe and feel. So we get these reflections out in the world, and the reflections are almost like ghosts of the past. It might be they hold an energy of mother or father, or so these reflections are sort of ghosts of the past. And if we chase them and try and control them and tame them and drag them to the ground, then we are getting into projection, because we are falling into the constellation. So it's like there's a mirror there, and we're trying to change the mirror, but really the work is to come back to the root, which is the energy within us, which is attracting all things. So it doesn't mean that we condone things that are not acceptable in our life. It doesn't mean that we're a doormat and we just say, okay, walk all over me and I'm just going to breathe and feel. It doesn't mean that we don't have what Eckhart Tolle calls a high quality no. We can have a high quality no, but a high quality no is one where we find a place within ourselves that isn't resisting. So Eckhart Tolle tells a story about a monk who this lady lied and said that the monk was the father of her child, and the father went angrily and brought the baby and said, you have to look after this baby, it's yours. It wasn't the monk's, but he said, if this is so, or something like that, if this is so, and he took the baby. A year later, the woman said, oh no, that wasn't the monk's baby, it was someone else's. The father came and took it away. And he said, if this is so, and his life just continued of just accepting. And it doesn't mean that our behavior has to be that way, but it means that finding somewhere within our heart, we find a place of non-resistance. So we can have our high quality no, but we try and hold it in a place of softness and non-resistance. And that's where we have to come out with the story of blame. So we see all of the transfixing reality around us that can sometimes be uncomfortable. And we don't get stuck there. We don't get stuck on that reality. We kind of breathe under the surface. And under the surface is the feelings, but it's also where presence is. So if we can get out of the story and into the feeling, we're going to start to return more into the background rather than focusing on that person, that situation. And we just see the background, which is shared presence is everywhere. It's an intelligent, loving life force. And it wants us to be whole and clear of the past. So the past is coming to pass. That's why we get triggered. That's why we get difficult emotions. And all things are connected. So all things are connected in presence. The same presence that's within me is within you. And we're getting activated sometimes. Sometimes we'll be the activator for someone else. Sometimes we'll say the words and do the things, and that will reactivate someone else. And often when someone turns around and say, why did you say that? Why did you do that? Someone might not even be conscious and say, well, what do you mean? Because Michael Brown says that they are activated by presence. So they're not even knowing what's moving through them, because we're being constellated by presence for the highest good of each other. So we trust that presence is responsibly activating people and deliberately upsetting people so that we can receive the message from the messengers. And messengers are what he calls people that are challenging us. They're our messengers. So we can keep reacting to those messengers and going like, oh God, why did you come? This isn't fair. I don't like you, go away. Or we can start to respond to the messengers by maybe having our high quality know and feeling our feelings and realizing that everyone is acting from the best level of innocent consciousness that they have access to at any time. So what else to say? We have a responsibility, and the responsibility he breaks down to respond ability. It's ability to respond. And we can consciously say, as I did say to that tour guide, that wasn't okay. That wasn't okay to disappear for hours and we didn't know where you were. And that was scary. So I can say that it's okay to tell people, when they upset us, but it's just, what do we do with it afterwards? And our responsibility is to sit and breathe and be with the feelings. And we're going to have a little bit of a practice on that, of how we can really experience that a bit deeper. And Michael Brown says, I think I said this last week, but it's not about getting better at feeling, but it's about it's not about feeling better, it's about getting better at feeling. So we're just trying our best to feel. And feeling is uncomfortable sometimes, and it's hard sometimes, and stepping out of all of this stuff when we have a nervous system that goes into fight, flight, freeze, when we have a limbic system of a brain that's going Nino, 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 Nino. We can have all of the biology that's doing what it's doing, and it's and we just have to do what we need to do to calm down our nervous system. And the breath is one of the most powerful keys for this. The breath is slowing everything down. As we slow our breath down, as we connect our breath, we're starting to come back into more presence, and we're starting to clear those old suppressed imprints that are within our system. He uses an analogy this week of oil and water. I don't have oil, but you can imagine that half the glass is oil and half the glass is water. And water is the pure presence of our being. And that's just expansive and grateful and present and limitless, eternal. And the oil is the part of us that gets all those old suppressed feelings and imprints and charges and stories. And when we react to what someone has done, it's like we're shaking the oil and the water in the hope of feeling clearer, but we just get more murky and confused, and we just start spinning round, and it's like a dog chasing its tail. But if we can just put the glass down, eventually they'll start to separate. The water will start to separate from the oil. And as we do our daily breath work, it's like we're spooning off that oil at the top. We're spooning off those old charges. So we just connect our breath, we stay connected, and we just little by little are shifting and releasing and integrating those old parts, those old energies within us. So the presence gets stronger the more that we do the breath. And he also uses an analogy this week of the theatre, which I really like, this analogy of life being like play. And if we can just see everybody just playing their part, this is the sort of like the secret of the masters. This is how the masters did it. They would see the people coming and going, but there wasn't a self to take it all personally, like this is happening to me, and oh, you know, this, you know, how could I have been let down? How could I have been this or that? But the masters just saw all the different people and saw it almost like a stage. And that's the sort of a level of consciousness that we can it's our spiritual practice to practice. And the way that we do that is we try not to shout at the actors on the theatre stage. We try not to go like, you know, sometimes we'll fall into unconsciousness, but we try our best to come back and to remember that they're all perfectly being acted by presence. Everything is here for our good. Everything is here for our growth. And our job is to feel it. Like you go to the theatre and you want to cry, and you want to laugh, you want to feel. If you went to the theatre and you didn't have an emotional reaction, it wouldn't be a very good play. You welcome the feelings, you welcome it all moving through. So we want to try and welcome what's moving through, but not take it so personally, almost like, you know, we're encouraging and welcoming what life wants to move through us to be felt. We're receiving the message. So the messenger's bringing the message, the actors, the cameos, the main part, the lead, whoever's around. And then we just receive the message by feeling it, allowing ourselves to stay with it. And our journey for the next 10 weeks of the experiential part is to really try our best as much as possible to see where life is like a play and we can just feel it. And what I tend to see with the presence process is the week that we're doing a certain week and focusing on a certain theme, it might get quite strong that week. There might be more triggers, there might be more challenges. So start to see if, you know, see how you are with what the theme is that's moving through. So I think that is all I'm going to share, but I'd love to end with just a little meditation for us to reflect on a circumstance that happened to us or a person that upset us recently, or was difficult to be around. And let's just use that in our mind's eye to just go into a little inner inquiry. So just take some nice deep breaths. Just think of a time that comes to mind where you've been activated recently. There was uncomfortable feeling in the body and maybe a part of you didn't want to feel it because it felt a bit overwhelming or it felt uncomfortable. Just see how you responded to that situation. Did you react or did you respond? And have no judgment on how you behaved. Just be curious. Was I able just to sit and breathe with it, or did I fall into a victim or victor or blame or complain? Now just asking yourself, am I able to see this person and this scene as a messenger sent from presence for my highest good? Am I able to see this scene, this person, as a messenger from presence for my growth and my good? And it doesn't have to be a yes, and it doesn't have to be a no. It might be a maybe. asking the question is enough. I'm just asking now, what feeling is triggered when I see this scene? What emotion arises? Where in my body? Is it perhaps anger, disappointment, sadness, fear? Any other emotion? And then just asking yourself, what in this story am I believing about this feeling? What in this story am I believing about this feeling? And just asking, does this story make the charge stronger? Is this story making me struggle more? And just breathing into that charge now, and see if you can breathe into it without the story, without the drama, but just almost as if you can see it like energy. And just almost be with the edges of it, be in the center of it, just move around with it, and just experience the energy. And just see now, does this energy remind you of something in the past? Just be curious if a memory comes, or a few memories come, or if no memory comes. It's not important. We just ask the question. Perhaps it's a repeating energy that you've had in your life over and over. And can you see that this charge might be here as a positive force to help you? It can be yes or a no, it's okay, whatever it is right now. But just see if you can just receive the message of it anyway, whether you feel trusting towards it or not. Just receive the message by feeling it now. Just asking if there's any support that this energy might need from you right now. Might be a hand on a certain place in your body, might be a bit more breath. And it might be a quality, of patience or compassion. Breathe that new quality. As you do that, you breathe more presence into that energy. A few breaths with just the energy and no story. Take a nice deep breath in. Nice deep breath out. And when you're ready, coming to open the eyes.